Hello, everybody, and welcome to, Poddywood. This is the show where we talk about movies with people that make movies. I am one of your hosts, Steve the Hester, and with me, as always, is...
That would be me, Andrew Roger Carson, joining you this week from an extremely hot room where all the windows, doors, and everything else have had to be closed just so we get good sound.
Yes, truly suffering for your art.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
The sacrifices I make just to make you people happy.
And speaking of sacrifices, let's not even beat around the bush with hyperbole and a weird intro this week. Let's just get straight into teeth.
You're a bastard. I had a really good segue into that too.
All right, then, give us a segue into it. Come on.
Well, we can't now because I needed to get in conversation first, but you just totally cut it off.
We've got a lot to get through in this episode because we have the one and only David Zucker joining us in a few minutes. So we need to get through this so that we can get lots and lots of lovely material together.
We do. Trust me. The intro was fabulous. It was hilarious, and it might even make its way onto the extended edition. You never know. But we are here in episode 6, also known as Return of the Poddy. Mm-hmm. Hey. Or Return of the Poddy.
Poddy?
Yeah, it's Star Wars, Steve.
Yeah.
I know you've got to watch it and it's in the box, but trust me,
okay.
it's a great movie.
Right. I have heard of it. I don't think I've seen it yet, though.
No.
Anyway,
so we have to talk here about what's in the box from last week.
Yeah.
Which was all about teeth.
Teeth. Okay. Right. Now, watched it last night. And the whole setup to it is that you have a young girl called Dawn, who is a what do you call them? The people that wear the pledge rings not to have sex, and until they're married.
Are you talking about Mormons? Maybe
Is it just the Mormons, or is it like
I was picking up a kind of Mormon vibe from them, but what do I know? I'm not a religious person.
Anyway, she's one of those that wears the purity rings and all the rest of it, and it turns out that she has actually got teeth in her vagina.
Big shock!
Yes. Now, as you can imagine, things are going to happen in this movie that involve male members being removed from the male personage. But being a 41-year-old man who has seen quite a lot of stuff over the years.
Oh, stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of penis as well. But this was marketed as a horror film / comedy.
Yeah, I was sort of more of a dark comedy.
1, it's not nearly funny enough to be a comedy. And 2, it's not nearly horrific enough to be a horror. And this is my big issue with it. I didn't like this movie, and you'd think I wouldn't like this movie because of the fact that guys get their dicks cut off by a vagina with teeth. But no, I didn't like this movie because I just thought it was a really depressing movie. I really did. I thought the basic elements are sex is wrong, sex is bad, men are all bad and they're rapists, women are only gonna hurt you and damage you. The only people that you can count on is your dad, and even then he sells her out towards the end to her stepbrother, and the whole thing is just saturated in this oppressive grey film that I was waiting for everything to kind of start off and go somewhere really early on, and it's going to be like a traditional horror film, because at some point she's reading up about the vagina dentata on the internet, and it goes into all this history about Greek myths and her having this thing that needs to be conquered by a warrior, which is in itself a rather dodgy message to be going on with. And so you think, okay, maybe this is going to ramp up somewhere. Maybe we're going to end up with an actual kind of, vagina monster. Or maybe she's going to be taken over by it. She's going to become evil, which does kind of get touched on in the end. But it doesn't. It doesn't go too far down the horror route for it to be scary. And even though it does have some amusing bits, like the gyno exam, which I do have to admit, I was laughing at that scene. It's nowhere near funny enough to make it worth a comedy, particularly as in some territories it had posters which looked like it was straight out of a Farrelly Brothers comedy.
That's very true. So, for a movie about vaginal dentata, were you expecting it to be all smiles?
No, but I was expecting there to be more of it, really. It's just a depressing film. I did not enjoy it at all.
So you were honestly sat there waiting for Audrey 2 to jump out and
That would have been
devouring.
preferable. I'm not even saying that I wanted to see any explicit close-ups or anything. I just wanted there to be something, but there isn't. And the closest that it comes to her becoming any kind of antagonist is right at the very end when she's left home and she hitches a ride with some old guy that looks like Freddy Krueger's ballsack. And he's not letting her out the car until she does something to him, and she gets this really kind of nasty smile of, oh, okay, I'll do something to you.
Yes, this is the look to camera style thing that was the one ruined part of the movie. But I think it's probably the best movie about vaginal teeth you're going to find.
Yeah.
If that's your thing.
There's all kinds of messages that you can look into it all, saying, okay, maybe is it about abstinence and sexually transmitted diseases? Is it about warning of the dangers of men? And, I looked up, and the director / writer, Michael Lichtenstein, is gay. So was it then kind of like an anti-feminist kind of tract, really trying to demonize women? I don't know what it is. All I know is that by the end of it, I just wanted to just forget that I've ever seen this film. Not because of the fact that guys got their dicks chopped off, but because of the fact it's a really depressing downer of a film, and I don't want to see it again.
Well, you can ask Mitchell himself when he's going to be a guest on our show in roughly around 6 weeks. I'm sure he's going to love the feedback from that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So, he's not. I could ask him, but he might scour through this and say, ooh, teeth. I wonder what Steve thought of it.
I'm sorry, Mitchell, if you're listening, I did not like this film. Sorry, dude. Didn't like it.
Art is subjective, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Everyone has their opinions, and that was mine.
Okay. So, you won't believe this, as we're just about to run into our anniversary spot, but I'm so glad we're not doing this thing through video right now, because my chair has just decided, no, I don't want to stay at this height anymore, and keeps sinking to the floor, and I'm starting to resemble a giant praying mantis. And I keep hitching it up.
Do you want a drink?
Yeah, I think I do.
Do you remember that sketch? Do you want a drink? Yeah, I'll have a screwdriver.
Well, wasn't that to do with Red Rock?
It was to do with Red Rock. It was Red Rock adverts.
Which was just before the Naked Gun movies, which is very ironic, Steve. People are going to think we lined that up perfectly, and we didn't. Steve's just a lot smarter than I am.
Really? Could have fooled me.
So, anyway, let's move into our anniversaries section, shall we? And this week, with music.
We watch them again all of the time, or we get them on Prime for free. But we only know how old they are when we learn their anniversary.
Yep.
You know what? I'm starting to think I've got anal dentures that are eating this chair as it's going down.
Well,
yes, I did it finally. Every week I've been waiting to get you with that. Perfect.
Well, I'm not exploring that one. Let's put it that way. So, go ahead. And what films have we got this week?
Well, this week we celebrate a bunch of anniversaries, which we will quickly glide through, shall we? Mm-hmm. Can you believe, Steve?
I don't know, Andy.
That 25 years ago this week, From Dusk Till Dawn was released.
Ooh. Now, I have seen that movie. Controversially, though, yet again, that is another one that I don't like.
Why? Don't stop there. Come on, we're all on tenterhook, Steve.
I don't know. Maybe it was the time that I saw it in my in kind of like my late teens. I was expecting it to be one thing, and it transferred into another one. And I know that that's what a lot of people like about the movie. I could probably do with watching it again, to be honest, because it probably has been about 25 years since I actually saw it. But no, it didn't sit well with me. I don't know why.
It's that kind of grindhouse movie that I think was kind of out of vogue at the time, and this really kind of got those grindhouse movies back noticed again to the point now where, they're now cult classics. But controversially, I am going to say something about the movie that is celebrating 20 years this week.
20?
I have a soft spot for Pearl Harbor. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not a great film, but there's something very enjoyable about it. And maybe it's because it is bad to an extent. And, it's I don't even know if I can justify it, but I just have this bit of a fascination with Pearl Harbor. Maybe it's because I went to see it in the cinemas, and it was a huge screen that I saw it on, and the whole Pearl Harbor fight, which lasts probably about 20 minutes of the entire 3-hour movie, was spectacular. Was it as good as Tora Tora Tora? No. That is basically the benchmark for Pearl Harbor attacks, in my view. But there is something about it that has a bit of a magic appeal for me. I don't know.
The one thing which I always think of when it comes to Pearl Harbor
Don't say Team America.
It's that song in Team America.
I knew you would.
Pearl Harbor sucks, and I miss you.
Well, let's add another 30 years onto 20, and let's go back to 1991, where Mermaids was released. The film that launched Christina Ricci on us.
No, she didn't. No, tell a lie. I almost said no, she did Beetlejuice, but she did do Beetlejuice. No, that was Winona Ryder.
That's Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
Who was also in Mermaids.
Yeah.
And Cher.
God, yes, that was before The Addams Family, wasn't it?
Just before it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think The Addams Family, the first movie, celebrates this year as well.
Oh, we're going to have to do something about that.
Maybe. And let's talk, finally, about our 10-year anniversary. And sticking with an old favourite from last week, X-Men First Class is 10 years old this week.
Now, that one
is an X-Men movie. Yes.
I did enjoy that one. I thought it was really, really good the way they were able to restart it, how they were able to make things make sense and still keep the original continuity. And I still love that Logan cameo.
That was in that one, wasn't it?
That was in that one, yeah.
Yes, it was. So I get confused over certain X-Men films because I was reading up before about X-Men Origins Wolverine. And, this film is known for being absolutely terrible. Mm-hmm. And the worst, well, one of the worst. I don't think it's the worst anymore. But it's one of the worst X-Men movies. But Deadpool probably wouldn't be Deadpool today without the disaster of Deadpool of X-Men Origins.
Yeah, it's true. But just going briefly to First Class, the one thing which has always got me in that movie is I can't remember what the character is, but there's a character in there whose power is that he can adapt to any environment. He sticks his head in a fish tank, he grows gills.
Right.
And so the bad guys show up at the little compound where they are, and one of them basically fills his head with a load of energy. And then he dies. It's like, okay, aren't you supposed to be able to adapt and change? How'd that work?
I don't know. Maybe you're still suffering from when he met that girl with the vaginal teeth.
Oh, don't get snappy.
Oh, yes. I was chomping at the bit for that. Well, I don't know if we've exhausted our vaginal dentata. I know that Neil somewhere is laughing his head off because he watched it last night. I've not asked him about it yet. I don't even know if he's still alive.
Oh, God, it all depends on how far through he got. I really wanted to turn it off about halfway through.
No, you've got to see these things through.
Yeah.
Got to see them through no matter what.
I know. I'm just hoping there's going to be something better when we do What's in the Box later on.
Yes. But anyway, now it's time to focus on, I guess, our very special guest this week. We have a great friend and mentor to myself over the last few years. He's a writer-director of the iconic Zucker Abrams Zucker team behind the comedy classics The Naked Gun, Basketball, Kentucky Fried Movie, and of course, Airplane. His movies have topped greatest comedy polls for the past 4 decades, and their influence on comedy has rippled through motion pictures still to this day. He's a producer. He's now an author with his new book, Before the Invention of Smiling, The Incredible Journey of the Zucker Family from Horse and Buggy to Indoor Plumbing. He joins us today from Los Angeles. David, it's a pleasure to have you join us this week.
Hi, I'm happy to be here or anywhere.
In regards to the book, and this is something I really wanted to jump into at the beginning of our talk today. We've both read it over the course of this past week, and it's just a fantastic documentary of your early family history. And the structure of the book is so involved. I felt the written form of it pulls you into this journey that you've kind of undertaken from the interviews you performed being written exactly as they were said.
Right. It's divided into, 5 chapters, I guess. But the first 2 chapters are an interview with my grandmother. And I'm so happy that I managed to get that. It was back in 1976. Went back to Milwaukee for a visit, and having lived in L.A. since '72. And we grew up listening to my grandmother's stories, and she was talking about her growing up in this little village in Hungary, and they had to escape in the early 1900s, and they had to walk over the border at night, and I thought that was pretty cool adventure because by that time I was into Davy Crockett and history. That got me interested in history. So I thought, look, our family has our own family history. I want to find out all about it. But she was interested. She loved to talk about it, and I was the only one of her 10 grandkids who listened.
It's not really a question, but I was reading through the book and I did see the mention of Hester Street in New York because that's my surname. So it always kind of makes me a little bit excited whenever I see that. But she really didn't like New York, did she?
No, she, I grew up in Milwaukee, of course, so I felt very fortunate that they did skip New York. But other people in our family did settle early on in Milwaukee, probably right around 1900, maybe a little before. And so they skipped New York, and Grandma said she saw New York and didn't like it. So it was too crowded, and I guess we were more of a small town provincial type family, which really served us well when we started writing the movies and getting into the entertainment business. I think it gave us a different perspective, because when you come from Milwaukee, you're not anything hot stuff. Everything came from New York or L.A. and came to the Midwest. And so our doing airplane eventually we were able to throw it back at everyone. And so we saw it as an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that the book actually starts with a near tragedy involving this flood. And it's weird to read that and consider that comedy may have never been the same had that
That's
rescue
right. Yeah.
not taken
That's
place.
Right. Yeah, and I relate this story that they finally got to higher ground, and my grandmother was essentially not breathing. She was 1 year old or less than one during this flood, and there was a man who was sitting nearby who said, "What do you care if you lose one kid? You got 8 more or whatever it was." But it kind of shows the importance, and there's a whole Talmudic saying about if you save one life, you save an entire world, because who knows how many people are to come after. But you're right, it certainly did save comedy. So that's right. That's what I'm concerned with. I don't care about the lives. Yeah. So yeah.
Hey, well, during the book, you're talking about how you took a break from, I think it was Scary Movie 3 that you just finished shooting.
Yeah,
you went
just
over
finished.
to Europe. In the book, you talk about how you got directed through this town to that town to this landmark to that landmark, and they were all still there in Europe. But then later on in the book, all the stories about the important buildings in Milwaukee, they're all gone.
They're all gone. Well, actually, in my grandmother's little village, all of the buildings were gone too. What I did discover was the exact place where their house was, and the current houses there were probably built on the foundations of where that whole thing was in my grandmother's time. So, but everything's gone in Milwaukee,
including that train station as well, which is like a beautiful building.
It was beautiful. They had 2 beautiful train stations, and they demolished both of them. I learned later from someone on one of these Milwaukee websites, the history websites, that the Milwaukee Road train station was burned in a fire. The horrifying aspect of it is that they replaced it with horrible modern buildings, and the 60s was a awful time for architecture.
You've spent a few decades now working on compiling all of this information together and doing a lot of independent research. How much history kind of adorns your house now that I'm obviously going to pick up on the next time I'm over, with these kind of artifacts from your family history that's been passed down to yourself?
There were a couple of items that were brought over from Europe. One was the trunk that they use, and I have it pictured in the book. And I have that in my living room. And the other were two brass candlesticks, which my great-grandfather on one of his buying trips to Budapest or Prague. And so, and he brought back these candlesticks because his wife my great-grandmother was pregnant at the time, so he was hoping for a boy. And the story is that he came back, found out it's a girl, but he gave her the candlesticks anyways. This is how sexist everything was then, and how unwoke it was. But people used to spit tobacco into spittoons, so things changed. Sometimes for the better.
I mean, the one of the great things about the book, I mean, obviously, your grandmother Sarah is a standout character. She has this amazing memory of all these events in the family history, which obviously is the driving force of this book. It's actually made me want to go and explore my family history. It was that kind of involving as a read, and I couldn't put it down. That was just an incident with some super glue. But it is a fantastic book, and people should definitely take a look at it. It is available on Amazon, and it's a great read.
Yeah, it is. I've thoroughly enjoyed it while I've been reading it, and not trying to suck up, but it was a fun read.
Yeah, especially for you two, because it's mostly pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. If it was written on crayon, it'd be a classic.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's so easy to read it, but I hope it is inspiring for people to research their own family history and mainly to get these stories down before people die. I mean, all these stories would have been just lost. I was the only one who, saw value in it and recorded it. So it will be there for my kids to see.
A lot of British comedy acts and actually a lot of later American comedy acts always tend to point to things like Monty Python as their influence when it comes to the surrealistic and the absurdist comedy. But where did yours come from? Did that all come from your family? Were you looking at American comedians, or where did it all stem from?
We did like Woody Allen and the Marx Brothers. That was kind of our comedic influences. But and our own family. In the book, there's a picture of me as a 4-year-old, and I'm standing on a chair in between my dad and my grandfather. And my dad and I are wearing bow ties. Mine, I'm sure, was a clip-on. And my grandfather, to match us, as a kind of a goof, tied his necktie into a bow tie. And it looked ridiculous, but he's posing in an absolutely straight face, which makes it funny. And I think we kind of grew up with that kind of attitude. My dad would say a lot of funny things. He wouldn't tell jokes like two guys walk into a bar. He didn't know any jokes, but he would say funny things. And part of what was funny about it is that he would say it with a straight face and not wink. So I think Jerry and I definitely absorbed that. And that really became Leslie Nielsen, who would say very funny things, silly things, but with a straight face. We loved Jim Carrey or Kevin Hart or Eddie Murphy, Steve Martin, but those guys are funny guys. They're funny comedians, and it's a different style.
It's actually something I did want to touch upon that later, but I was just seeing when you were first kind of starting out before the Kentucky Fried Theatre was established, you were starting out doing a job, I believe, were you gluing furniture?
Yeah, I had summer jobs, and one of the jobs I had was at a place called the Milwaukee Chair Factory. And I was gluing foam cushions to the back of wood-backed chairs, and, before they would stitch the seat cover on. I had a spray booth, and occasionally a fly would drift into the spray booth, and I would nail the fly with my sprayer. But not only that, I would then write down with a marker, the date and the time of the fly's death, and paste it up on the still drying glue with the fly. And pretty soon, everybody in the factory was drifting around to see this fly museum, and so they rotated me to a more isolated part of the factory where I wouldn't disrupt anything. Yeah.
That is genius.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Oh, God. One of the names used to come up in Kentucky Fried Movie was Samuel L. Bronkovitz.
Oh, yeah, Samuel. Well, yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, we just thought it sounded like a real producer name, of the 1930s, like Louis B. Mayer, all these guys, Samuel L. Bronkovitz Productions, because when we were doing Kentucky Fried Movie, we had no credit ranking, and everybody was demanding money up front, and we couldn't afford. We didn't have any money. We were, waiting for some money to come in, and it was done on the fly. And so we renamed our company Samuel L. Bronkowitz Productions. And so when our producer would call for a lighting kit or something, they would say, "Well, who is this for?" And he'd say, "Samuel L. Bronkowitz Productions." And the lady on the other end, one of them said, "Is he still making pictures?" So it worked.
I can just picture somebody dressed up in a fat suit going, "Okay, who am I?" "Yeah, Samuel L. Bronkowitz." "Okay, I'm
right.
Samuel L. Bronkowitz."
Yeah, well, we actually, and then when we did the trailer for the movie, we cast a guy, this 80-year-old guy, and said, "This is Samuel L. Bronkowitz," and he was in a wheelchair with a blanket over his lap, and really looked like he had 10 days to live or something. So, and he said, "You must see my new motion picture, Kentucky Fried Movie." Yeah,
that's genius. But the Kentucky Fried Theatre, it kind of had its genesis upon, I believe, a viewing of Void Where Prohibited by Law.
Yes.
What was it about this performance that kind of ignited that creative endeavor for you guys?
Well, I had wanted to get into film, but I was working for my dad as a construction expediter. He was building an office building at the time, and I didn't know how to get into the film business. My dad said, "Well, my friend Bill Kesselman has a franchise business, and he's using these videotape decks." And at that time, they were, huge boxes with reel-to-reel tape, half-inch tape. And I said, "Well, I want to do film. What would I do with video?" Anyway, so some months later, I went down to Chicago to visit a girlfriend, and we went to this show called Void Where Prohibited by Law, and it was a video show. And you went upstairs to the top floor, the second floor, and it was a loft in Newtown, Chicago. And we sat on a gigantic waterbed and watched a television monitor, and it played like an hour and 10 minutes of these jokes and sketches and mock ads. And that was an epiphany for me. I thought, okay, this is what we can do. We can do this, and we can charge $1 or whatever it is and start our own theater. And that's what we did. So I drove right back up to Madison, where my brother was a junior in college. And I said, "We can start a theater. We can borrow this videotape, blah, blah, blah." So we did. That's exactly what we did. And we recruited Jim Abrams and another friend from Milwaukee, from our high school, Dick Chudnow. And the four of us started Kentucky Fried Theater.
So obviously this all leads to the Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yeah.
You had the Fistful of Yen, the Enter the Dragon parody. Because that takes up such a big chunk of Kentucky Fried Movie, were there any other ideas that were kind of like flying around at the time before you settled on that one?
I'm not sure what the genesis of that was, except that we all went to see, Enter the Dragon in the theater. And we left the theater just, we were karate chopping with our hands and doing imitations of the actors. And we thought we loved the movie. But anything we love, we can spoof. And because we also loved airport movies and detective movies and James Bond movies. So we decided to do a 25-minute segment, a movie within a movie, inside of Kentucky Fried Movie. And it really helps break up the whole sketch feel of it.
Yeah, and Kentucky Fried Movie obviously was the kind of your launch pad into the world of motion pictures. Obviously, we're not a director back then, but was John Landis kind of a requirement from maybe the financiers or the studio execs to have a qualified director on board?
Well, it wasn't a studio. It was United Artists Theater Circuit, which was a exhibition chain. We shot with Landis a 10-minute short, which was consisting of 4 of the sketches that went into Kentucky Fried Movie. So we needed to prove that we could do it. And that's what got it. That's what got the movie made. And so UA Theater Circuit financed the entire, $670,000 budget of the movie, which is now like half of our catering budget on a movie. And we did it as the team. Landis directed, and we had written the first draft of Airplane before that, and we wanted to direct Airplane, but we weren't ready. Our experience being on the set of Kentucky Fried Movie really, we went to school and we realized what was going on about directing, and we were confident that we could direct. And then when we got to Paramount with Airplane, then we insisted that we had to direct it, and that was a whole other struggle.
How much of the Kentucky Fried Movie was original? How much came from existing theater sketches?
So I think it was about half of it was from the theater, from the show. They were bits from the show, and you can kind of tell there's commercial spoofs and, like the sex record and a lot of that stuff. And the other half, like Fistful of Yen, was new material written especially for the movie. That sketch in Kentucky Fried Movie of the newscaster watching the couple, that was
yes.
we did that sketch on stage. We had the actual television monitor on stage, and then the couple making out with their backs to the audience, and complete with the fellatio and the whole thing. So yeah. And when I think of my mom and dad coming to see the show, oh my God.
Was that a classic? So this is what you're doing.
Yeah, so this is what you're doing. And then, in before the invention of smiling, we have the story about, having to show my grandmother and my Aunt B and Uncle Maury, the Kentucky Fried Movie. And so we showed them an edited version. And it backfired when they actually went to the theater to see it. So they wanted to see our names on the big screen. And essentially it's a porn movie, And so, oh my God.
Oh yeah, especially the Catholic high schools in trouble. High school girls in trouble.
Oh
God.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like.
I believe that was cut out of. I think it was Irish broadcasts. I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know that somewhere one country actually did cut that entire scene out.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, all I can think of, maybe they went out to get popcorn during that. I don't know.
One thing, before we move on, there's one thing that always stuck with me about that sequence, and that's with the sexual. Never has there been such perversion. You've got the little person that's whipping the two girls, and you've got one girl who's desperately trying to cover her face by burrowing into her arm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. And then we have a funny picture that hangs in my office today. We had that exact scene in the background. They were ready to do a take, and we quickly came and posed on our knees in the foreground, looking over a script, doing a script conference. And in the back, yeah.
It's true. I have seen this picture in his office. So obviously, naturally, this has kind of all led to Airplane, now regarded in most circles as the greatest comedy of all time. Naturally, like every success story, it has that story of struggle. Exactly how many studios turned down this for petty reasons?
Well, every studio. I mean, however many studios there were in Hollywood at the time. 8, something like that. I mean, they absolutely just turned it down. And we would go in and pitch, and they liked us, and because we were nice and charming and whatever. But they didn't get the movie. And I think I later read that some actor who just died. He was a sketch comic. He said that he was offered the part. He wasn't really, but the studio sent the script out to a lot of people. And he read it and he thought it was just a bunch of puns and slapstick. We wouldn't have cast him anyways. Bob Hayes was the choice, really, from the moment he came in to read. He was the one. The movie was, you could read it and it would be hard to imagine, because I'm sure even Michael Eisner, who greenlit the thing for Paramount, probably imagined Bill Murray or Chevy Chase doing the main part, and maybe Harvey Korman and Dom DeLuise, because that's how movies were done up to that time. Part of what made it so difficult to get the thing financed was that we were pitching this as it was going to be a comedy without comedians. You could liken it to Columbus saying, we're going to sail west and there's going to be land out there. And the conventional wisdom was, no, the earth is flat and you're just going to fall off the edge of the earth. You can't do that. And we were going against all convention. So, but we do give a lot of credit to Michael Eisner, who, one guy, it just took one guy.
Well, that's usually the case in a lot of Hollywood stories. But when you were going through it and going through the editing process, apparently you took it round to universities and you said that as soon as a joke wasn't getting a laugh, it got cut. Now, did you
Yeah.
end up reusing any of those in later movies, or did they just all just...
No, no. If a joke doesn't get a laugh, that means it's not funny. It's you have to have some humility to do comedy, because if you're arrogant and you say, well, the audience is wrong, I mean, you'll get a movie that's greeted with silence. So you have to listen to the audience, and we trimmed it. Comedy needs pace because of the momentum, and that the weaker jokes are uplifted by the fact that it's going so fast and the audience is already laughing. So there's a definite psychology that works there. And so we previewed it like at about 6 different colleges. And after each preview, we would do more trimming and, rearrange some things. And that's how it has worked for every movie. And what that means is that the first preview is going to be a disaster. And that's what it was for Airplane and Kentucky Fried Movie, and all the Naked Guns, the scary movies, everything.
So I think you kind of touched on it a bit earlier on when in obviously casting non-comedians in your movies. So did you always try and find that whenever you bring a new serious actor into comedy, are they trying too hard to be funny initially?
Actually, not so much anymore. I mean, it always takes directing. Even with Leslie, who was a veteran, he has to be directed. Some people, it's better if they don't have any experience with comedy, like Priscilla Presley. And Priscilla, I remember not having to really give her much direction. She was just great because all she knew was serious acting. So she was always great. But also Charlie Sheen knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And he was so smart and so good, such a great actor that he was able to do it very easily. And so I worked with him on the scary movies. Simon Rex was great, and Anna Faris was also very good at doing this kind of comedy and not trying to be funny. And so, I think pretty much people get used to it, after the first day, and I keep them in the pocket and keep them being serious.
Well, as time's gone on, attitudes have changed to comedy, and I suppose we're probably going to be talking more about this later. But there's certain jokes that you look back in the movies and you start thinking, that really doesn't fit well. Do you regret some of them, or do you
Oh yeah. Some things you regret, and then you wish you could have it back. And it's things that make you cringe. Vince Lombardi, the famous football coach, said that we're going to shoot for perfection, knowing we're never going to reach perfection, but in the pursuit of perfection, you can reach excellence. And and this was probably the greatest coach who ever lived, and he knew it wasn't going to be perfect. And so, in any artistic endeavor, I'm sure there's those things that you'd like back, you'd like to do over again. But we try to learn from each movie, and that's why we kind of evolved these 15 rules, which are very helpful to us in keeping us from doing what we shouldn't do.
Was there any kind of backlash from Universal, who were behind the Airport franchise? I mean, they were still releasing the Airport movies around that time. I believe the Concorde
Right. Oh,
movie,
yeah.
which I think was their last one, came out the same year. So was there any kind of hostility or lawsuit threats or anything along that line?
Not lawsuit, but there's always a threat of a lawsuit, but we wanted to use Helen Reddy as a singing nun to talk to the little girl. And they said, that's a character from our Airport movie. You can't use that. This wouldn't happen nowadays. Everybody's used to spoof. And that's why we have our stewardess, Lorna Patterson, singing to the little girl. But she borrows a guitar from a nun. So that's how we kind of got around it, alluded to that airport scene. And then they gave us a lot of trouble with the title. They didn't want us to use the title Airplane. And so they compromised that we were able to use Airplane domestically in North America, but everywhere else it had a different title. So in France, it was the is there a pilot in the plane? And in Germany is the crazy flight of the crazy airplane, something like that. It was different titles. And in the UK it was Flying High, which
Really?
may have been, it was called Flying High. I'm not sure what it would have been in Australia, but
That is weird to me because I've only ever heard of it as Airplane.
Yeah.
yeah,
I can imagine when they first released it. Obviously, when the airport movies were still going around to avoid confusion.
So
and then over
but
time,
we got a lot of problems from Universal, and we got a lot of problems from Paramount, who didn't want to let us direct it, but we still controlled the script. We didn't sign the script over until we had permission to direct. And then the Directors Guild also wouldn't let us have three-man director credit. And that was a scary thing. And I was going, wait a minute, can they do that? And our producer, Howard Koch, said, they've never won a lawsuit. You can sue them, but then it might be too late. So what happened was that Jerry went downtown to the LA City Hall, had his name legally changed to Abrahams N. Zuckers, and the Directors Guild computer spat out a card that said Abrahams N. Zuckers. And when they found out about it, they were furious, but there was nothing they could do because we were going to do that. And then, well, Andrew, when you were at my office, you probably saw the clapperboard for airplanes says Abrahams and Zuckers, and it said that because we didn't get our waiver from the DGA until 2 weeks into shooting, so it was already Abrahams and Zuckers.
Well, your mum shows up in Airplane as the woman that's trying to put on her makeup during
Yes,
during
right.
it all, and she's probably most recognizable from the scene in The Naked Gun where she tries to kill Pap Schmier.
Yeah, I must. Yeah.
How supportive was she of you and your brother getting these films together? And have you tried to squeeze in any other relations over the years?
Well, they were. My parents were very supportive. Although I don't think if you're from Milwaukee and your sons go out west to become Hollywood, I don't think they, in their wildest dreams, believed what was going to happen, because this stuff doesn't happen. But they were so pleased and so much enjoyed our success. And they came out for the shooting of every movie, and they would come out for a visit and stay for a couple of weeks. And my mom would always have a part, and my sister always had a part. And my mom was also in Ghost. My brother directed Ghost. And
yes, she was the bank teller, wasn't she?
The bank teller who had a scene with Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze. And it was great. She also had a scene in Basketball. As late as that, we were still doing them. And she had cameos in Naked Gun 2.5, 33 1/3, all the movies.
This kind of reminds me now, I kind of have to add this in now that it's kind of been brought up. But obviously you kind of spoofed the infamous pottery wheel scene.
That's right.
Ghost. Was that a deliberate jab at your brother for having the most successful movie of the year?
No, well, it wasn't a jab. I saw Ghost. I was all excited. I called him immediately, and I said, well, first of all, I loved the movie. I thought it was terrific. And then I said, we can spoof this. Yeah, I said the original idea for it was to do it in the trailer. And you started out the pottery wheel, and then you pull back, and then it's Leslie and Priscilla. And in a trailer, that was huge. That was just so funny, because you could see people just, the girls in the audience would lean forward, like, hey, this is cool. And the guys would sit back in their chairs, arms crossed. And then when it was Leslie Nielsen, the place just erupted. It was so great.
You famously kept a tight rein on the scripts and the jokes, and apparently there isn't much improv in there, but there are a few, such as the slapping scene in Airplane. Lee Bryant, and apparently she said to keep it going. Is that right?
Right. I think they were originally just shaking her, and she said, you should slap me. And I don't know if that was in the original. If it was in 0 Hour, we may have done it. Because, Airplane is based on 0 Hour, 1957 black and white movie, which has the same plot. And so in the script, it was just shaking the woman, and then the stewardess passes it off to Leslie, and Leslie passes it off to someone else. And then the whole line of people, that was added. I think Lee Bryant did add the slapping. She said, "Go ahead, you should slap me." She wanted to get slapped, so that was for some reason. You could ask her shrink why she was.
I do love the fact that Leslie gets an extra one in just as he's leaving.
Yeah.
I know. I love that. That is like, that's where the comedy goes into, Jim Abrams and I always say that's essence.
Yeah.
Occasionally the movie will go into, it's the hyperspace of comedy. I love that. And I don't remember if that came from, if Leslie just did that or if we directed him to do that. But that was not in the script.
No, it is just a little touch of genius. It still gets me every single time.
Yeah.
Just that second slap.
That second slap, yeah, it's great. I love it. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, the other one I love is when Leslie, he says, "What the hell's going on up there?" And it's got just the feet in the stirrups, and he's holding a speculum. And why he's giving this woman a pelvic, we don't explain.
I watched Airplane the other night because my girlfriend hadn't seen it. We were watching it together, and that bit just came on. And also the bit which I also really love, and I've got to bring it up here, that classic moment. They could be miles off course. That's impossible. They're on instruments.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that I have to give you an applause for that one.
Yeah.
I've lost count the number of times I've seen Airplane. That scene still makes me howl. Just that hard cut to it.
Right. Well, and I think that a lot of people, when they read the script, the studios that turned it down, I think it's moments like those that they thought, well, this is just silly. I mean, it is silly, but and if you think of a line like "I am serious" and "Don't call me Shirley," if Bill Murray says it, it would be funny, but it would be like 25% as funny.
Yeah.
You had to visualize it, and no studio executive could visualize it enough to greenlight it, except for, of course, Michael Eisner, who I don't know what he thought it was. I think he loved these airplane in trouble movies, that he had done a bunch of television movies at ABC during the 70s.
I mean, the "Don't Call Me Shirley" line is probably the most iconic line in comedy. Every single person, when you say Airplane, that line is the first line that they will quote. Did this joke have a history prior to Airplane? Where did this kind of joke come from?
Well, it came from Zero Hour, because that's one of the straight lines in Zero Hour. The doctor says, "Can you fly this plane and land it?" And Dana Andrews, the actor in Zero Hour, says, "Shirley, you can't be serious." And Jim and Jerry and I, sitting around in the writing room watching this movie, one of us, and we can't remember who, said, "I am serious, and don't call me Shirley." I mean, I can't remember. I wish I could, but it doesn't matter. It's not important to us who wrote what. It was important that the collaboration survived. And that's the way to do it, is not to take individual credit.
No, definitely. So I know we kind of briefly touched on it before, and touching on this kind of cancel culture movement that's sweeping through everything at the moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And with you yourself, David, obviously you, as well as Jim Abrams and your brother Jerry, kind of ushered in like this new era of comedy in the 80s. Do you believe now that with the whole cancel culture, is this damaging comedy? Are we on a road to comedy becoming dull from everything being kind of just censored if someone doesn't like it?
No, we're not on the road to that at all. It already is dull and horrible. It's there's no road to anything. It was the end of movie comedy. It's so horrible. I guess there's some stuff on TV. One thing I know that is funny on TV is the Impractical Jokers. I don't know if you've seen them. Mm-hmm. They're hysterical. They make me laugh. Movie comedy, it's not that people wouldn't think stuff is funny. I think it's in the studio boardrooms, they're frightened of the cancel culture. But I have a couple of scripts that, I don't think they're not about current culture. So they may be able to get around that. I have a spoof that I've written with Pat Proft, James Bond, Mission Impossible, Bourne Identity, that genre. And then another one that's based on film noir. And I don't think there's any current cultural references. These movies would go outside of that, but it's still hard to get a movie made.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to get a movie made.
Right.
Well, David, I was going to ask what the future of House of Zucker is, but obviously we now know you've got some projects out there that we really want to see. We want to get back to that zany Abraham Zucker comedy that we all know and love.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for film noir.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love film noir. Yeah. And well, that's what Zero Hour was. Are you familiar with that, with 0 Hour?
Yes.
I
Yes.
know
Okay,
of it.
so,
I
yeah.
haven't seen it though. But I know
Okay,
of
well,
it.
what you can do is for a little primer for that, go to YouTube and put in Airplane 0 Hour, and people have constructed scene for scene, side by side, of 0 Hour and Airplane, and it's pretty instructive about how we did this movie.
Okay. Well, now is our time on the show where we usually go into the realm of Nominate 5. So, Steve, do you have a tune for us?
You know what, Andy? I do.
Now's the time to nominate 5.
Nominate 5?
Yes, nominate 5. Not 3 or 4 or 6 or 9. Now's the time to nominate 5.
David, don't run away.
It's fine. Come
Okay,
back.
well, we got that over with. Yes.
So basically, this is the point of the show where we ask our guest every single week to nominate 5 movies for people to go and hunt out that they would personally recommend. And obviously, having a godfather of comedy here, we've asked David to nominate 5 comedies that are his personal favorites that he would highly recommend. So
Well,
David,
the best non-comedy film, of course, is The Godfather, but that we're doing comedies. So,
Yes.
the comedies that I love that people should see are, I would start with the Marx Brothers, Night at the Opera.
brilliant.
Which is
I actually watched that the other week.
Great, funny movie, and Duck Soup, which is also, hysterically funny, but not as good of a movie. It's kind of like Airplane and Top Secret for us. And then Woody Allen's Annie Hall
Yes.
is wonderful. Stuff that makes me laugh and think. Groundhog Day is brilliant.
Yes.
That's got to be
It's-
one of the top.
Love that movie.
Tootsie is one of the top comedies. You know what else also made me laugh was Bridesmaids and
Yes,
and
brilliant.
Bad Grandpa.
Oh, it does surprise me.
I was like crying. It was so funny.
I've got to
Anyway,
admit, I loved Bad Grandpa. I think we've actually done 6 there, and we didn't even do the countdown.
No, we just went.
right?
Wait,
Yeah.
We fail on that countdown every week.
Was Bad Grandpa the one with Johnny Knoxville, or was that
Yeah.
the one with Robert De Niro?
Johnny Knoxville.
No, I have seen that one. I haven't seen the other one because watching Robert De Niro in something like that just makes me very, very sad.
Yeah, well, I had never heard of Bad Grandpa, and I hadn't really watched any of the Jackass.
Yeah.
And I was really unfamiliar with that. Anyway, so my son, who was 12 at the time, wanted to go to see Bad Grandpa with his friends. And so I drove them there, and I was intending to bring along a book and a flashlight because I didn't know how I was going to sit through this stuff. But I started laughing, and Charles had never seen me laugh in a movie because I don't think anything's funny, of course. It's I have a terrible time at movies, but I love that. So I always think of that when I want to recommend some movies.
And also, in going back to A Night at the Opera, I believe you were involved with Brain Donors.
Yeah,
weren't
the
you? Which was
remake,
Yes.
wasn't it? Yes.
Yes, Pat Proft wrote that, and my brother Jerry and I produced it. Yeah, that was a fun project.
It's one of those fun movies that I always recommend to people, and they've never seen or heard of it. I don't think it did very well here in the UK.
It didn't do well anywhere, but it was pretty funny. A little quirky, I guess.
No, it's definitely worth finding out for sure.
It's a cult classic, which
Yes.
all my flops are cult classics.
Well, this is going to surprise you, Andy. I have actually seen it.
Wow. Now,
Yes.
that is impressive because Steve has hardly ever seen any movies of worth. So it is amazing that you have actually found this very rare film.
I have, yep. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I can't remember much, but I have seen it.
Well, David, thank you very much for the Nominate 5. Obviously, your book, Before the Invention of Smiling, is available on Amazon. anyone who's after a really good read, or everyone who's after some really nice pictures to accompany their read, they're going to really enjoy this book. We can't recommend it enough. So do track it down. I understand you're also starting to write your next book also.
Yes, it's called Surely You Can't Be Serious. And we've been working on this for years. And it's an oral history told by Jim and Jerry and me, just about how we started in Milwaukee in 1971 and ended up doing Airplane, 9 years later. So that's getting to the point where we can start to send it out to publishers, maybe in another few weeks. So we're getting close on that one.
Well, we definitely would love to have you back when that book is getting ready to release and talk all about it and expand more. We also have the 30-year anniversary of Naked Gun 2.5 this year.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Am I invited to any parties? I don't know.
Well, we'd love to have a party here. We'd love to have you come back and talk about that at some point in the future. Because obviously there's so much career there to talk about, and people definitely want to hear.
We still have to talk about Top Secret and Naked Gun, and Hot Shots, and all the way Basketball, which is actually one of my favorites. I do think that is a really underrated movie.
Yeah, thank you. That's another one that was it's a cult classic. It's another, but also I've been pitching a television series based on basketball where we'd have real teams, real teams around the country, and it would be a spoof on pro sports. So I'm just working on all these things, and eventually I'll get a yes somewhere.
That would be absolutely huge. So all of you executives out there with lots of money to spare, there's a series there that everyone wants to see.
I do. I know that for a fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm waiting here at my estate by my pool for for somebody to say yes.
David,
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've had fun.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Not that I'd ever do this again, but this was fun.
Well, once again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again. We will put links for Before the Invention of Smiling on all the social media, so you will be able to see it there on the post accompanying this episode. So go and buy it. It's a really good read.
Yes,
Excellent.
it is.
Thank
I've been
you,
enjoying
guys.
it. But if you're going to be ordering something from Amazon, then it might come in a little box. And then you can ask yourself, what's in the box?
What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
David's neighbors probably hate him right now.
Yeah, I had respect for you guys right up until that. So, yeah.
Oh, you think these segues are bad? You should have been here the other week. Oh, good God.
Okay, Steve, explain what's in the box.
Okay, the basic setup of what's in the box is that Andy has a box full of movies which are certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. There are many, many films which I haven't seen, and he is going to pick one out of the box. If I have seen it, then it gets tossed to one side, another one gets picked out, until we have one that I haven't seen, and then I watch it the night before we record our next episode.
This is true. David, if you would have heard the beginning of the show, and you probably will if you ever want to hear this ever again, last week Steve had to watch a movie about vaginal dentures, and he loved it, really. So, and that was certified fresh, a movie called Teeth. So this week I've just picked one out of the box, and Steve, you have to watch, if you've not seen it already, Brian De Palma's 1989 movie Casualties of War. You get all the feel-good movies.
Oh, yay, that sounds like an absolute hoot and a half.
Yes. And you can tune in next week to hear his thoughts on that.
Yes,
But
you will.
for this week, a huge thank you again to a good friend, David Zucker. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, David.
Sure, it was fun.
And it's a goodbye from myself, Andrew Roger Carson.
And it's also a goodbye from me.
That's it, is it?
Just
That's all
just
you've gone
that.
for? Okay.
Yeah, just going for that, yeah.
Isn't there some big playoff music to?
There should be, yes.
Yeah.
What?
If you guys wrote those other bad songs, couldn't you write a bad goodbye song?
What, you mean this?